Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining me here in my home studio. We're just testing out, trying to figure out this home studio. Fantastic. I'm in the comforts of my home. Maybe I'll get too comfortable and I'll say more things that I'm not supposed to say, but holy cow, do I have a can of worms that I want to open today. And it's going to be me maybe doing a little bit of backtracking. I hope you're ready for this. And backtracking a bit on Andrew Tate. You guys have heard me this week already criticize Andrew Tate and to already be backpedaling. But hey, that's what I'm going to do. When I'm presented new information, new facts, I reach new conclusions. I'm not going to walk back the fact that I think Andrew Tate is a pimp and is, doing some of this as a grift, trying to get out from underneath his problems in Romania and in the UK. But I got to be honest, I got to follow the truth wherever it leads. And watching Andrew Tate on the Patrick Bet-David interview, and it went on for 3.5 hours, watching it and then putting the pieces together and looking at what others are doing and saying at the same time, scales are coming off my eyes, new realizations are coming to me, and I got to talk about it here in real time. So that's what we're going to do today. At some point, when I'm maybe run out of a little steam, I'll bring TJ Moe into the conversation, or maybe I won't. We will see. Stay tuned. But let me just get right into it in terms of why I'm perhaps pivoting a bit on Andrew Tate and going to unpack a different point of view or a more nuanced point of view about Andrew Tate. And you have to realize the time that we're living in and then see things through that lens. And this is where I give Alex Jones a lot of credit. Holy cow, was he ahead of the conversation when he started calling his platform InfoWars. We're in a war of information, and it's as violent and as nasty as a war that's physical combat, that's dropping bombs and shooting bullets. This is like modern day warfare. InfoWars, the information war. And so you have to reevaluate and look and say, well, who are the soldiers in an information war? And of course, Alex Jones would be one. And he's out on the front lines. He's been out on the front lines. And then you have to ask, well, who's preparing the troops? Who are the drill sergeants? Who are the people getting the next batch of warriors prepared to go out on the information battlefield? I have to acknowledge that Andrew Tate, unfortunately, is one of those drill sergeants. And this is where his value comes from. And this is where I believe many conservative influencers are reluctant to criticize him because they believe, and they rightfully believe, we're in a war. And in war, sometimes you become allies with people you have strong disagreements with, people that you may not fully respect, people whose way of doing things aren't your ways. But because you're in a war, you strike up an alliance with them. You're very reluctant to criticize them. You prioritize different things in a war. And so, oh, Jason, you're a Christian. You can't make those types of compromises. And to some degree, you're absolutely right. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about people engaged in the information war. And those people are making a different set of decisions based on Andrew Tate's ability to reach young soldiers and young people. I had not fully understood this. And so And I'm not sure if you guys fully understand it, but I want you to understand what the stakes are in this war. And when people go into survival mode, that's when they really, really like, hey, man, I don't care if you're Attila the Hun. I don't care if you're Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't care if you're Charles Manson, O.J. Simpson. If you're on my side in this information war, until we get to the other side, until we declare victory in the information war, I'm going to overlook your flaws. I think that's the calculation many people have made. And at this point, I'm more reluctant to criticize the people that have made that calculation. And so let me go a cut deeper and explain to you why I think survival is at stake and why I think that many of us that are alleged conservative influencers, alleged evangelical influencers, if we were doing our job, Andrew Tate wouldn't be necessary. Andrew Tate wouldn't have the following and the ability to influence young men the way that he does. We have been afraid to go all the way down the rabbit hole. We have been afraid to make enemies of people that perhaps control purse strings or we rely on financially. And Andrew Tate and some of these others are not afraid to go there. They're not afraid to have very, very uncomfortable conversations that there are real consequences for saying things that powerful people do not like. And so I came to this realization Monday and Tuesday as I watched Andrew Tate say some very, very interesting things on the Patrick Bet-David podcast. And here I think is the most powerful thing and the thing that explains like, okay, this is why he has an alliance with some conservative influencers, because they're like, hey, we got to have this conversation, and only Andrew Tate is willing to push this conversation and have this conversation in a very transparent and bold way. And young people want to have this conversation. Young men want to have this conversation. So let me play this clip of Patrick Bet-David asking Andrew Tate a basic question, but Andrew Tate, man, he went there with his answer talking about World War II and a narrative from World War II that has put white men on the defensive. They can't be nationalistic. They can't take pride in their country. They can't want a homeland for white people and what is being called white people's values. Let's play the clip.
Together to fight against it, because then they are what?
Racist.
Nazis.
Yep.
Nazis.
Yep, for sure.
So they use World War II. Let me ask you guys a question. If they use World War II to subvert white nationalism to the point of extinction, wouldn't it be truly treasonous if the story of World War II wasn't even true? What if there's another story to World War II? Is it true, the story that we know, the version of events that we know? Hitler's just crazy and he just lost his mind. I'm asking questions because in my world, I understood that victors write the history. Winners write history. Winners are always the good guys. Loser was always the bad guy. Loser had no point of view at all. The winner had all the right thing and they were doing all the right things. So I'm just asking you, if this war is what's shaping the modern world and it is bringing on the ideology which is going to lead to the extinction of the white race, isn't it important we find out if the story we're told is even true? Let me apply this to modern time. If you listen to the media and the story they tell you, Putin's crazy. Putin's nuts. And he's lost his mind. And he has no point of view at all. And he has no reason to invade Ukraine. There's no possible reason. If you research, you'll understand he actually has a pretty good argument. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm saying that he has his beliefs. We have our beliefs, some right, some wrong. There's no such thing as black and white. There are different varying shades of gray in every single conflict. But the Hitler story, the World War II story, is black, white, because that's how the winners want to write it. And that's how it always goes when the war is over. And the story of Russia-Ukraine is black, white. Ukraine's innocent, we're innocent, Russia's nuts. But if you actually analyze things and understand them really, you'll see it's not that way. So this is a very interesting thought experiment. And that's what I'm doing before the media attacks me. I'm not advocating for anything. I'm not saying anything. This is a thought experiment. If one particular ideology is shaping society to the point where an entire race will go extinct, shouldn't we understand that period of history intimately? Yes or no? I would argue yes. And if that's the case, perhaps when we understand it better, perhaps white people might save themselves. Perhaps.
That's Andrew Tate connecting some serious dots. And you may disagree with his conclusions and his narrative, but there's a lot of people that do not disagree and actually think that, like, the narrative around World War II and the narrative around Germany and Adolf Hitler has put all of white people on the defensive around the globe. Well, you can't have white pride. You can't believe in a Christian culture. You can't have a homeland for people who look and think and talk like you do. And every other group can do this. This is what Andrew Tate is arguing. And it's really, really hard to disagree with him. It's really, really hard. And this isn't some celebration or defense of Adolf Hitler. It's an analysis of the aftermath of World War II and why white men who helped stop, fight, and destroy Adolf Hitler have now been apologizing for the last 80 years. So the very people that fought and stopped Adolf Hitler have had the narrative around World War II turned on them to where they spend all their time like, well, I can't be nationalist. I can't. If I want to protect white people, I'm racist. Now, black people can join the NAACP. Black people can go out and protest in the streets and say Black Lives Matter. But Jewish people can say Jewish Lives Matter. They can have the Anti-Defamation League. But no organization can be formed about protecting and preserving white men and white people. That's racism. That's a double standard that will not survive and cannot survive when the white man starts looking at his homeland or what he thought was his homeland or the country that he feels like, hey, my values shaped America. My values shaped Europe. And now other values and other groups are coming in and imposing their values in this information war. This information war that has white people on the defensive and backpedaling and surrendering and tolerating and adopting new norms. And at some point, white men have reached the conclusion, justifiably, I think in my mind, and any objective person like, well, hold on, if we keep backpedaling like this, if we keep surrendering ground like this, we're going to be extinct. And I think that is a word that Andrew Tate used. And it's like, hey, if we're going to correct this problem, we have to have a conversation that opens people's minds to the fact, hey, this mindset is a problem. And Andrew Tate has been a very effective advocate for making this argument. He's half black, he's half white. It's hard to just call him racist for making these arguments. And so white people and white men that think they're in a fight for their survival are like, yeah, I'll be an ally to Andrew Tate. Yes, he's got some shady things in his background, and he acquired wealth in a very shady and unethical way. But right now, I'm in a fight for my survival. And so I will ally alongside Andrew Tate. And Andrew Tate, if he really went all the way with this argument, would say, what did you do in World War II when you thought the argument was made that, oh, Hitler's going to take over the world? His argument would be, didn't you form an allyship with Joseph Stalin? Arguably one of the one or two greatest mass murderers in modern global history. If you can form an allyship with Joseph Stalin and a communist regime that is hostile to all forms of religion, but most particularly Christianity. Did you know scammers can literally steal your home right out from underneath you? The FBI calls it home stealing, and it's a growing real estate scam targeting American homeowners. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee, and file it with your local recorder's office. Just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they can take out loans using your equity as collateral or even sell the property behind your back. And you won't even know it's happened until you start getting collection or foreclosure notices. So let me ask you, when was the last time you checked your home title? If you're like me, you haven't done it, not nearly as regularly as you should. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. That's why I trust Home Title Lock. Their $1 million triple lock protection helps keep your home and equity safe. Here's what you get. Immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property. Urgent alerts if there are any changes. And if fraud should happen, their US-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost. And here's the best part. I've teamed up with Home Title Lock to give you a free title history report so you can find out if you're already a victim and access to your personal title expert, a $250 value just for signing up. Go to HometitleLock.com, use the promo code FEARLESS250, promo code FEARLESS250, or click the link on the description. And make sure you check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code FEARLESS250 to get the protection and peace of mind you deserve. You can be allies with Joseph Stalin in World War II, but in an information war in 2025, you can't be in an allyship with a former webcam pimp. That's his argument. And there's some validity to his argument. You've listened to me be very critical of Andrew Tate and not try to rationalize and excuse his behavior. And I'll never do that. But when you look at things through the lens of the consequences of this information war and people believing that, hey, my survival is at stake. Now you sit there and say, oh, this dude ran webcam girls. Who cares? I've got to survive. I want to leave a homeland to my sons and daughters and nieces and nephews and their kids that I recognize and I support. I don't want to leave my kids to a homeland where the nuclear family has been completely destroyed and that kids just run wild, unparented, and that marriages don't survive. I don't want to leave my kids to that type of homeland because that level of chaos puts their life in jeopardy 24/7, 365 days a year. So white men that have sat around and thought about this and can see which way the wind is blowing, and they look over at the UK, they look over at Europe, look what's happening in those countries. Look, they've completely lost control. And you have immigrants, and you can sit here and naively, foolishly, immaturely say, well, you know, what about Jeffrey Dahmer? What about this white man or that white man, these individuals that did X, Y, and Z? But they're talking about a much bigger thing, a culture. And Lynn, it just falls flat when you say, when you look at the marriage rates and the divorce rates and the illegitimacy rates of certain demographics that have completely rejected Jesus Christ and Christianity and have rejected Western civilization. It's like you can't build a future with those people. They don't share your values, and while invited into the American family, they have rejected any sort of assimilation. What do? Oh, let's be tolerant. And they get to gather up in communities and just have babies indiscriminately and be irresponsible in developing and raising their kids. And I've just got to be tolerant of that. And if I run into them out in public somewhere, I just have to bite my tongue, hold my breath. If I run into them on a subway and their child that they abandoned is now a 28-year-old or a 30-year-old or 40-year-old homeless person who's schizophrenic and has a history of violence towards random people, I can't subdue them with a chokehold when they're threatening people. I just have to be tolerant and allow that. And if they want to threaten my women, if they want to get in my face, if they want to do anything, I just have to allow that because I'm racist and I'm being tolerant. That's not going to stand forever. And so I saw what Andrew Tate said on the Patrick Bet-David show, and then I just happened to run into a clip of Tucker Carlson talking this week, where Tucker Carlson was having a conversation, and he went on to talk about, hey, how come there's a demographic, white people, that seem to be playing by a different set of rules? They can't have a homeland. They can't be interested in self-determination. Let's play that clip.
Well, just on principle, like every other group in the world has the right to its own homeland except white people? Like what?
Yeah.
Like tell me, just explain to me how that makes sense. Either no group has the right or every group has the right. Yep. It's really that simple. And if you want to say no group has the right, okay. You might even convince me. I don't know. I'm not a race guy, actually, by my temperament at all. I'd kind of like to ignore it. But as long as some groups have a right to self-determination, then every group has a right. Yep. It's that simple. Yes. And if there's a special carve-out where one group doesn't have a right, you have to explain to me why that group doesn't have that right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Is that fair?
No, it's absolutely fair. Well, I think South Africa is a...
What? I mean, what the hell is... Why are we playing along with this nonsense?
Yeah, it's this narrative has become this massive stream that is turned into rapids on a river that just pulls everyone along. And this narrative just says if you're white, then there's inherently something wrong with you.
It doesn't make any sense, and it's leading toward a really bad conclusion, obviously, as it has for every other group targeted in this way has really suffered in a bit, and there are a lot of them, okay? It's not, there are a lot of them.
Yep.
And it never ends up well. And I just don't know why we're playing along where you're not even allowed to say, oh, you haven't been. I don't care anymore, obviously. But again, either every group has a right to self-determination or no group does. You can't have this system where, some groups do or all groups do but one. No. It's all or nothing on this.
Yeah, well, I can guarantee...
Tell me how I'm wrong.
No. Well, I can guarantee you that when I get back home, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble for this interview. It's
Well, I don't know why though. I mean, like, what's the counter argument? I don't really get it. Like, what is the counter argument? There's only one group on the entire face of the planet that doesn't have the right that every other group has. Like, tell me how.
it's
No,
really
I mean, like,
bizarre.
maybe there's a good answer. I'm waiting for it.
No, well, we don't know what the answer is.
So there is no answer, and so because there is no answer, the way that uniformity is maintained is just through threats. Like, shut up.
Yep.
You're a bad person.
So that's Tucker Carlson, not in the kind of detail, but he's basically saying the same thing as Andrew Tate. He's raising the exact same question as Andrew Tate. And so it does not surprise me that Tucker Carlson, pragmatic, smart, a visionary, can sit here and say, hey, we're in an information war, and the stakes in this information war are as deadly and as consequential as World War I, World War II, the Civil War, any of these combat wars. This combat that's going on between the ears has as high a stakes and as bad a consequences as the combat that's going on between men pointing guns at each other. And so he's saying, like, yeah, I'll be an ally to Andrew Tate at this time, as long as I'm in this war for my survival, because Andrew Tate is someone who can reach young people. And so Tucker Carlson, like Alex Jones, like others, he's out on the front lines fighting this war, this information war. And he's asking, he's like, well, I'm losing bodies out here, and I'm going to need people to replace some of these other soldiers. Who's preparing those soldiers' minds? And it's whether we like it or not, it's Andrew Tate. He has the connection with young men. They follow him. Now, as it relates to their salvation, are they following him straight to hell? Yes, they are. But people are in survival mode. And so Joseph Stalin in World War II, there was no salvation for him. But because people were in a war and it was for survival, yes, I will be an ally with Joseph Stalin. These are the decisions that get made. Or do I think there's an argument to be made? Hey, maybe it was a mistake to ally with Joseph Stalin. I think some people in history think General Patton thinks it was a mistake to be allied with the communists, with the Marxists. But we can't even have the discussion, because if we have the discussion and just have the discussion, reach no conclusions, but if you just have this discussion, you run the risk of being framed as anti-Semitic. And there are serious consequences in America and in Europe and around the globe for being called anti-Semitic. And so in this type of war, where there's a segment of white men in white America that feel like them and their way of life is at stake and hanging in the balance, will they say to themselves, hey, I got to form an allyship with Andrew Tate, a Muslim, a pimp, an idiot, but he is someone who will tell young men the next wave of soldiers that I need in this information war. He will tell them, hey, quit apologizing for being white. Defend yourself. Defend Christian culture. Defend the accomplishments of white men. And it's unfortunate. In my view, this conversation shouldn't be about skin color. The conversation should be defend Christian culture. But I look at myself and other evangelical conservatives or people that claim to be conservative. We don't want to go anywhere near this conversation. It's too heavy. The risks are too high. And we just want to remain in our safe space and make sure that our 4,000 square foot home, the mortgage is caught up, and, you know, my wife is happy, and I've taken no risk. Those men and that mindset is going to continue to allow America and all these Western civilization cultures to get destroyed. And we're going to be, because we won't rise, he's going to continue to be necessary to win this information war. And so that's why I'm telling you, I hadn't realized these things. I hadn't come to these conclusions on all the previous things. And so I'm not in any way defending Andrew Tate's previous behavior. I'm not even defending his current behavior. I'm not calling him a non-criminal. I'm just explaining why there are some people that believe he is necessary, and perhaps he actually is necessary. That we're in a larger war with consequences much greater than having to sit around and worry about whether Romania or someone else will put this man in jail for slick talking whores. Because that's what he did. He slick talked some whores. Or turned good girls into whores. And yes, it's a crime. And yes, I want God to deal with him on that. And yes, if we weren't in this information war, if we weren't scrambling so bad, hey, lock him up. But right now, I think people are saying, hey, we need him on the battlefield, because Christian men have been so feminized that we have no appeal to young men. Christian men like myself have walked around in such a gluttonous state that perhaps it's difficult for us to get young men to follow us. And so I'm just keeping it. If we'd done our job, if we were leading these conversations, Andrew Tate would be unnecessary. If we were in the gym and presenting ourselves as the physically and verbally as an example of godly masculinity, Andrew Tate would have no appeal. We wouldn't need him. And so my argument is it's our fault that we need Andrew Tate. We are so fallen, so weak, so stupid, so cowardly that we've put ourselves in position that we need Andrew Tate, and he knows it. Here's Andrew Tate. Patrick Bet David asked him a question about Dave Portnoy, who's went to Twitter and had some criticism of Andrew Tate and said something about, hey, I thought we were in a country where we're fighting illegal immigration, but now we're letting in a criminal immigrant or whatever. And
who is a Trump supporter. He's had Trump on. He actually did a good interview. Two, Ben Shapiro. For himself, what do you say to him?
I've spoken to him once on a podcast, and I said women couldn't drive, and the face of horror he pulled. I don't know if he was because he was afraid of his audience, and he was like, look, I love women drivers.
Is this the one about the IQ stuff that you guys talked about?
We did a podcast once. I said women couldn't
Yeah.
drive, and he pulled this fake face of horror because I guess he's afraid of being canceled.
Right.
It was on a Zoom. There was a girl on it, another guy.
It says
yeah.
everything you need to know about Dave. I don't know much about Dave. I don't know. I see videos of him jumping up and down about sports teams, and he's 47 with no children and smokes weed. That's what I know. He dislikes me. A lot of these conservatives who dislike me for the key reason that I am the hero they want to be. They know I'm the hero, why he has the point of view he has. I would put it down to jealousy because I'm big, tall, brown, sexy.
I think that's what it is.
Patek.
Yeah, with
It's a
diamonds.
Patek
Don't
thing.
forget the diamonds.
It's a Patek thing, but I've got diamonds on.
it's a fair response. He said, I think accurately, that I don't think this applies to me, but I can understand why Andrew Tate is a part of it. Have to go. It's a fair allegation. I disagree with it. It's not jealousy. It's disappointment that we're in this position. And it's, just my objection on like, hey, where is Andrew Tate really leading us? Like, we may win the information war and we may survive, but no one will have salvation. It's a fair criticism that, and Andrew Tate knows it, that it's a fair criticism. He's when he says that Dave Portnoy, and we're doing outreach to young men. We want to reach young men and inspire them to be fearless, to be masculine, to be a true representation of Christ and Christianity. We, at the scale that's necessary to bring this culture back to some sort of resemblance of a culture critique that Andrew Tate has put forth here. I think some of it, look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what is it that we need to do so that we're less reliant on someone as repulsive as Andrew Tate? It's no different than the people sitting around upset, oh, Donald Trump's president, he acts in a way, blah, blah, blah. Well, Christian men, those of us deep in our journey or trying to be deep in our journey, why did Donald Trump become necessary? Because we failed. Because he's the only one that would do the job. And trust me, love and support Donald Trump for stepping up. Obviously, I have far less of a problem with Donald Trump's mean tweets than I do Andrew Tate being a former pimp. But now I'm starting to get and fully understand why Andrew Tate is framing himself as a different form of Donald Trump. And yes, it's a tough pill to swallow that I may have to tolerate Andrew Tate because of my failings. I mean, literally, just think that if I were a former college football player in peak condition at 57 and talking to young men about, hey, why you should do X, Y, and Z. What if instead of being a sexual degenerate in my 20s and 30s and part of my 40s, what if I had made a condition household? Here's what I do to stay in shape. Here's what I did to acquire this wealth. What if I had done my job? Andrew Tate wouldn't be necessary. So I'll raise my hand and say, from now on, when I talk about Andrew Tate, I'm going to think about my failures first. And I'm going to say and plead guilty to that I created an environment where someone like Andrew Tate could step in and have this kind of influence over young boys globally and here in America. We have fallen and failed. And I'm going to bring TJ Moe into the conversation because, it's part of what we're doing at Fearless. Is part of the reason we do roll call every year. It's part of the reason I'm inviting you all to Roll Call 3.0 because it is our mission to do a better job and to reach and disciple older men, younger men, just men in general, to get them in alignment, and so we can figure out who our real allies are. And so someone like Andrew Tate, a former pimp, wouldn't be necessary for the survival of Americans' Christian culture. But we've so fallen that we need some Muslim dude running webcam girls in Romania to help us win. Just think that through. A Muslim dude running webcam girls in Romania is necessary for our survival. That's how bad we've been at our job. And we've let things deteriorate to the point that everyone thinks we're in some sort of racial conflict, rather than a conflict of good versus evil, rather than a conflict of atheists and Marxists and satanic demonic people versus Christians. That's the real war. Christian culture. Jesus Christ is under attack. And we got to turn to a Muslim because we failed. We have to stop this. And again, this is why roll call and the other things that we're doing are so important. Because we could win the information war, and then all of us that lost our life in the information war while winning it will all be in hell for the celebration, because there will be no salvation. Because that's going to be your reward for winning the information war. Meeting in hell. We got to figure it out, guys. We got to do better. Me, you, all of us. Don't go anywhere. Bring TJ Moe into this conversation next. Men, it's time to rise. Our country, our faith, our future, all under attack. I'm bringing the boldest voices to Nashville. Roll Call 3.0 is your call to action. Join me, join Tucker, and let's take a stand together. May 2nd and 3rd in Nashville. I am Jason Whitlock, your host.
Went without so that he could give you an abundant life.
Young men shall utterly fall. Jason, I know you called us to preach off, but I feel like preaching up in here right about now.
Welcome back. Gonna bring in TJ Moe, the Show Me Kid, my partner in Christianity here. I was gonna say partner in crime, but we're not partners in crime, but my partner in Christianity. TJ, what do you think about my Deion Sanders-like backpedal here on Andrew Tate?
Well, the way you wrapped it up, I don't know that I'd call it a backpedal exactly. I mean, you ended with a pretty strong criticism. You said he might be necessary, but he's going to lead us to hell. So, I don't know that you'd categorize that as a backpedal. I do think it's a fascinating realization that most conservatives haven't been able to pinpoint. I've heard nobody discuss that point at all, that there are very few people who can reach young people, and he's one of them. So do you reject him and allow him to run wild, because he will, and he has, and he continues to, or do you embrace him and hope to steer the conversation in these certain ways? And that is part of the calculation here. I think I'd like to hear your answer to this, because what I was thinking throughout your presentation, I think it's a fabulous argument, but what do you think about the calculation of mothers, or probably you, right? Or anybody for a long time that would say, hey, we're winning the information war in one specific narrow place, and that is America, whatever that is, and his allowing this to continue and standing up for yourself and being a man. But it's different than, you mentioned Stalin. We partnered with Stalin, and we had to save these people, so why can't we partner with him? Well, the difference, some of these people might say, is you partnered with Stalin, who was not speaking to your 14-year-old kids at 9 p.m. at night in their room, telling them that if you, let's see, if all of your children come from one woman, then you are not a conqueror, and that Christianity is actually weak, and that's why he converted, because Christianity is not the way. He's a Muslim, and that he used to be a Christian, realized how weak it was, and then he moved on from there. He's had his past life that he, sort of pretends doesn't exist, but the difference maybe between partnering with him and partnering with some of these other horrible people is the actual influence literally in your children's bedroom as they try to steer them, like they're right in this one little way, but now they're steering them in all these other places, not just the road of destruction as it relates to salvation, which is the most important, and that's the point you made, but it's literally everywhere else in their life. So all the stuff that we're saying is being imported that is terrible, he's actually not just trying to import it, he's trying to transform it in our own children.
I think most people would say so was Joseph Stalin, and he was very successful. The Communist Party was in the United States of America and very active in the early 1900s, and certainly in the aftermath of the World War II, even more involved. But communist Marxism, those political theories have been very active and influencing America. It's like we've demonized Joseph McCarthy, and he's another person we probably need to go back and say, hey, maybe he was right. Maybe the communists were infiltrating America, and Joseph McCarthy would be, if he were alive today, would say, I told you all that, they were planting these seeds of communism everywhere in American institutions. Our academic institutions all are very respectful and promote a communist mindset, and that's not something those seeds were planted 100 years ago, and this is what smart people understand. America, a lot of times, the average American is just way too short-sighted. We think in the next 5 years I want to do this, or maybe if we really think ahead, we're thinking about the next 20 years. Well, these people are thinking 100 years. And I think they say in China, they think 500 years in advance. So my argument would be is Joseph Stalin had far more influence over American young people and American culture than Andrew Tate will ever. And that's, we can all hop on YouTube, we can all hop on our phones and have access to Andrew Tate. Those things weren't available in the 1930s, 40s, 1920s, blah, blah, blah. But there were other means. And I think it was, I read somewhere recently that there's a Russian acting method that in the 1930s, 40s, Russian actors came over to America and taught American actors how to act. And so when you look at Hollywood and you look at the way Hollywood, the CIA, and just the way Hollywood influences American culture, and you wonder why all these Hollywood actors are all pretty devout communists, even though they won't say it. Well, if you understand the history of, American acting and art, and it has such an incredible communist influence that lives on today. So, Andrew Tate got a long, long road to go before he'll ever be as influential as Joseph Stalin was in America.
I think it's called Stanislavski's system. I think that's what you're talking about as far as it came over in the 19th century and talked about imagining your role and all that. Yeah, I think that's a fascinating point. And there's zero doubt if anybody's paying attention. I mean, this is why yesterday Linda McMahon came out and said this is our final mission and that they're trying to abolish the Department of Education because it all plays in. So I do agree with that. The concern still, if you go back to those times, I think, kids spent time at school, but parents were still the most influential. And I think that's not true anymore. Parents are no longer the most influential people in their own homes. And so you may calculate that differently, where it's like if Andrew Tate's the most influential person in your household, and he might be for a lot of these parents, then that's a bigger problem than going to school, having a little bit of sprinkled in from your teacher, and then you come home and sit them straight. Because the young people throughout history have always been really dumb, then they wise up. It's interesting, and this might be a point for your argument, partially Andrew Tate, I think largely Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk. But did you see the Rasmussen poll that came out Monday? 60% of 18 to 29-year-olds approve of Donald Trump right now. It's like the highest for a Republican in history. So the young people have actually moved over in this direction in a big way. What's really interesting is for the 65 plus, it's only like 45%. The old people that have always been considered the people that support Republicans and the old white folks and whatever, they're not really into it. But these young people have moved over, and that might be part of what your argument is. You're like, do we just have to survive in the meantime? Is Donald Trump the guy that's got to abolish everything? Just get it through over the next decade. Let's just make it, reset everything. And then hopefully by then Christians have done what you've talked about, built ourselves up to become the real leaders.
Yeah, it took a long time to get where we're at, and it's going to take a long time to fix where we're at. And Donald Trump is just a step along that journey, I believe. I did see the Rasmussen poll, and I saw someone make a comparison of what percentage of people get their information from legacy media as opposed to, or cable news as opposed to alternative sources. And young people don't watch cable news, don't get their information from legacy media, and that's part of the reason why they're supportive of Donald Trump. Old people still get their information from legacy news, and that's why they're not on board with what Trump is doing. But trust me, there are, from Tucker Carlson to other people to any of these, parents. If you got parents with young kids or Candace Owens or whatever, they're really deep down in the rabbit hole and know their calculus is that Andrew Tate will inspire my kid to work out, to be a leader, whether it's a bad one or a good one, but at least my young boy will work out, be a leader, and be masculine. And so when you start, just survival is not just a color thing. At some point it comes down to like, and I've had this thought, like, and I'm just keeping it transparent, like, are gays going to rule the world? Am I going to be, because it feels like as a heterosexual Christian person, it's like, oh, I'm the outsider. And so I want the survival of heterosexuality. And because, this whole bisexuality they talk about, I don't believe in that. That you're not bisexual, you're gay. And so the survival of just heterosexuality, how many, and again, you got another bun in the oven right now with Kara. It's my parents' generation didn't spend a bunch of time going, oh man, I hope this kid's not gay. I think a lot of parents have a long conversation. Baby, what can we do? I don't want a gay child. And it's like people feel like it's a lottery ticket almost. It's like the way this is. And so just the fact that, and I know it's an irresponsible form of heterosexuality that Andrew Tate promotes, but people would want that above dealing with what Dwayne Wade is dealing with. And so this survival mode that people have gone into is like, okay, he's a Muslim, but at least he doesn't hate Jesus Christ. And at least he's heterosexual. And at least he thinks that white people and their culture has a right to exist. And he, people like me, and this is where I'm disappointed that it turns into this race discussion, because really, I'm telling you, what we're talking about is just Christian culture. And it disappoints me that so many black people are filled with racial idolatry, they feel like they have to reject Christian culture and they need to reshape it into Marxist Christian culture or racial idolatry Christian culture rather than, hey, just let me assimilate into, and we've turned assimilation into this curse word. And it really shouldn't be. There's nothing wrong with assimilating into a highly successful culture, and particularly a Christian one, that deprioritizes, de-emphasizes skin color and tries to emphasize values. I can assimilate into that every day of the week. All I got to do is adopt the values spelled out in the Bible, and I'm good. That seems like common sense.
So you made a few good points there. I'm trying to make sure I write them down and don't forget them. Gen Z Gallup poll came out last year. 28% are on the LGBT spectrum, whatever that means, right? Pansexual and whatever. Who knows what any of that stuff means? 28%. And now, Karen and I have never had those discussions ever because we live in a very intentionally insulated environment. These kids will not be exposed to it, and kids are being talked into being gay. They're not coming to these conclusions on their own. They're being groomed. Everybody likes to point to the Bill Maher show from a couple years ago where he's like, yeah, okay, if this is just a natural progression and we're just allowing kids to be what they want, why is it so regional? Why is nobody gay in Ohio? Why is it all the gay kids are in California, right? So we've never had that discussion, but it is a real thing. I mean, we look around, we experience it. The people at our church, all the kids in public schools, they're all doing it. So it is fascinating, and it's something to consider because, you mentioned that. You mentioned this earlier in your talk. I think a lot of people are similar to Tucker Carlson, who says a lot of things people are scared to death to say. And they're like, hey, I really can't support Tucker publicly because this is going to get me in a lot of trouble. They're cheering like crazy for anybody who will say the thing that they can't say. They're unwilling to take the blowback. And so you're one of these people. Tucker is one of these people. And Andrew Tate is one of these people. There's very few, man. Charlie Kirk's one of these people. You've got a few of them that will go out there and just take whatever bullets come at them. But I don't blame them for that. Now, where I get there's three people that I mentioned in that group that are Christians, you, Charlie, and Tucker. And then there's Andrew Tate. And this is where I get a little bit, it's like, where's he going with this? Like, he'll say this thing, but where's he really headed? Because I know your heart. I know Tucker's heart as best as you can without knowing the person. And I think I know Charlie's heart, Charlie's actually come to my church and spoken before. I don't know him personally, but I feel like I know that guy's heart by the amount of words that he speaks publicly. I know where you guys are going, and that you have to make a racial argument for people to understand your real Christian argument. Because if people can't understand the Christian argument, it gets rejected so quickly, people swat it out of the air. You start making the racial argument, everybody perks up. So there's a lot of white people who look around, they're like, so now you have to talk about it that way. But when Andrew Tate talks about it that way, I do get concerned a little bit. It is, I know he's mixed race and whatever, but like, he doesn't have a real value system like you guys. But I think the good point that you made is just like, at least he'll say it, man. At least he will say the thing that I'm feeling. And here's the other part of this, not to ramble on, but there's one other part. You're saying things right now that the vast majority of white people are totally unaware of. They can only feel it. They feel that it's happening. They can't articulate it. They don't know how to have the argument. They don't know. They just feel it. And so now you've said something, and now everybody can start having the conversation. But there's very few people. White people are sitting at home trying to pay their bills, trying to pay their mortgage, trying to make sure their kids aren't gay. All these other, the culture war is throwing so many things at these white parents that, like, are we getting replaced is pretty far down the list. It's just something that you feel. Like, the thing that you feel is it's not okay to be white. And so you have a group of people now that are saying, yes, it is. And not only that, it's okay to be proud to be white. It's okay to be proud to be exactly who God made you to be. By the way, that all leads back to Christianity, because he made you a son of God. That's ultimately where you're going. I don't trust Andrew to get there.
Well, and you shouldn't. He's told you that. He's a Muslim. He's rejected Christianity, and you shouldn't. But the only argument I'm making today is, while we're engaged in this life and death war, I see why. And until we raise up a Christian version of Andrew Tate, because we haven't, and it's great what Charlie does, and he may be the closest, but what Charlie does, what Matt Walsh does, what I do, I don't know if it's resonating at the same level, although, TPUSA is pretty powerful, and it is a monster, but Andrew Tate is reaching young men and some young women, and again, I'll say it again, it's a reflection on us that we haven't, and to that level. It's a reflection on us that, I sit there and think about a King Randall, who, came to roll call last year, will come to roll call again this year, and the work he's doing with young men in Albany, Georgia. It's like King Randall should be America's Andrew Tate. But we haven't supported him in a way, and maybe he hasn't done this, or maybe he's just young and in the process. But I do look at myself, and I think about the visions and the dreams I had as a young person, and I think about, hey, these were thoughts that God put in my head at 6 and 7, 8 years old, and how come I haven't reached these thoughts? I mean, I've done decent, but I haven't completed the mission, and I have to ask my gluttony, or and obviously my degeneracy sexually in my 20s and 30s and stuff like that, all prevented me from, and so that's all on me, and that's where when I hear Andrew Tate say, hey, some of you guys want to be this hero and you're jealous that it's me, and I think that there's a ring of truth to that. And I, part of what we're trying to accomplish with roll call is to correct that, and to give men the information and the courage that they need to act on that information. Because it's I look at Christians and our failure and the calculus that we've made. Well, I'm not going to talk about that because I may get called racist, or I may get called anti-Semitic, or people look at me funny at work. And there's a real price we're paying for that. And that's the backpedal and the surrendering and the compromise. Because, look, it's in a woman's nature to compromise. Well, I'll just meet you halfway to stupidity. That'll fix it. Whereas men need to draw a line and say, hey, man, I'm not going for this. And that's where I see Tucker Carlson and many other guys like, hey, man, I hear you about this slavery deal, but you were sold into slavery, and any of you with a brain are appreciative of what your ancestors suffered so that you could experience this American freedom in 2025, in 1995, in 1975. People got on me for saying that. It's like, Muhammad Ali's the one that said it. Like, boy, I'm glad my granddaddy got on that boat. And I'm just sorry. It's just true. And you can sit here and cosplay and act like, no, I'd rather be in Africa in some hut somewhere with no running water than here in America. Quit lying to yourself. Quit lying to everybody else. It's a joke.
Why do you think, because this is going to spiral into a strictly race conversation. We try to make it about Christianity, and you and I know that's ultimately what it is. It's a values conversation. But this will spiral, particularly with what Tucker said, the way he said it, that, hey, how come white people are the only people who don't get to be proud of their country? And he has said, don't get their own country. That's where it becomes a strictly racial conversation. Why do you think that, I think I know your answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway, that it is only white people that have created this country which is really only America, but it was England for a while, that everybody wants to come to. Because there are predominantly Asian countries, predominantly black countries across the globe that nobody has ever tried to break down the door to get into these countries. And so now it's these white people. Yes, America is so uniquely different in that, geopolitically it's different. You got oceans on both sides. It's there's a lot of reasons why America is different in the natural resources, all of that stuff. But it is predominantly white men, along with your argument that the black, Frederick Douglass types that forced the white people to actually do the things. My thought is that it's Christianity, but really most of these people don't believe in Christianity, and they're making these arguments. And they're trying to conquer what they say the white man has built. And so why do you think that is?
I think that there's a history of people rejecting Jesus Christ, and a country that came up with founding documents taken straight from the King James Bible is a threat and a target. And there will always be forces trying to destroy anything that tries to mimic or incorporate biblical principles into its foundation and way of operation. And so it's America's Christian values. And again, that's why there's such an attack on the Constitution. And you'll see leftists on TV. Well, no one that looked like me wrote the Constitution, and so therefore we must rewrite the Constitution. It's like America has been the greatest civilization ever constructed because it was so closely tied to the Bible and a biblical worldview, and the system was reflective of that. And so it's made us a target. It's made us irresistible. Everybody went, oh, look at the freedoms they enjoy, and look at the opportunities that they enjoy. And you'll have African people, Jamaican people, Asian people, everybody say, hey, man, if I go over to America and just adopt these values, holy cow, I can be super successful. No one will care about the color of my skin. That's just factual. Look at, no one cares about the color of Asian people's skin over here. They get married, they stay married, they browbeat their kids into being successful. Hey, we like that. I can deal with that. And again, they don't have the National Association of the Advancement of Asian People. They just come over here and assimilate, and they tend to marry within, but no one cares if they marry outside their race. No one really cares because, got a good SAT score, a good job, goes to work, and doesn't plan on getting divorced. Doesn't see divorce as a real option. Most people can live with that. I'm a single person with no kids. I moved into a neighborhood where everybody here has a successful marriage. That's where I'm most comfortable when there's, parents in the home and kids actually have to answer to somebody. That's the American dream. That's what people want to do. But these people, there's people that can't stand Jesus Christ, have promoted a culture that promotes the rejection of biblical values, and have convinced people that the white man is their enemy. And I just reject that, because I've run into, and trust me, there are some racist white people. Met them, dealt with them. But overwhelmingly, it's no different than my father, who did not like white people. But if you paid my father respect and you behaved in a way that he found consistent with the way he behaves, he didn't care what color you were. And he'd tell you all day, I don't like white people. But let a white person come in and respectfully treat him at his bar and engaging him in a, oh, you want to talk about Al Green music? Oh, yeah, let's talk Marvin Gaye. Oh, and you like to go fishing, and oh, you like to drink Crown Royal and blah, blah, blah. And they have no problem. And that's most people. But if you come in and say, hey, I don't like anything you're doing, and things must be done my way, or you're racist, you're going to have conflict with people, and you've invited that conflict, and so I just, it's unfortunate that a high percentage of black people, particularly led by the black woman who wants to be in control, wants to be everyone's boss, wants to be loud, and wants to wear T-shirts to say "Be quiet, a black woman is talking." I mean, who does that? Who? And people think that this is normal. I mean, would you wear a shirt that said "Be quiet, a white man is talking"? I mean, who does it? But anyway, so they don't want to assimilate into the patriarchy, a biblical world. No matter how much they go to church, they don't want anything to do with a biblical worldview. They don't want to submit to any sort of male leadership, and they have far less interest in staying married than getting married, and they just don't want to assimilate, and so they complain and say, you know what, we need a whole new set of rules. We need to detach. There should be a separation of religion and the state. Well, no, there actually shouldn't be. The government should actually be a reflection of our Christian values, and if that makes me a Christian nationalist, I'm going to plead guilty. But anyway, go ahead.
I think a lot of Christians will. I don't subscribe to this, but I think a lot of Christians are going to be thinking it. So I want to hear your defense of it, and I'll probably end up using your defense in an argument later. So that's why I'm asking you. A lot of Christians might say, "Hey, when we get into this race thing, we're kind of stepping outside of the Christian grounds. You know, where Paul told us there's no Greek nor Jew, right? And so when we get in and people say things like, hey, why can't we have our own country? Why can't white people have our country? Why can't black people have their own country? Christians might say, hey, that's really not how it's supposed to be. And, you know, we are, I mean, even down to, you know, can people have a preference to just marry within their own race? Is it okay for people to want their kids to look like them? You know, all these things, I tend to think all that stuff is totally fair game and very normal stuff. A lot of Christians, though, would say, hey, that's really outside of the Christian belief system, and that we're all just supposed to be one in Christ Jesus. What would your defense of that be?
My defense of what?
Of the preferences of people, and to say, look, I kind of like having, I mean, we tend to do it value-wise, but there are people who'd say, look, I'm really only interested in marrying a white girl. I'm really only interested in having white kids. I'm pretty interested in having a country that reflects my values, and white people tend to reflect my values a lot more than these immigrants, and so I want a largely white country. There's a lot of people that go around and say those things, and Christians would say, hey, you really shouldn't be doing any of that.
In an ideal world, you shouldn't be, but it's a natural instinct. It's those are, it's not that I'm punting, but it's like, I want to win the culture war and then deal with those details. And so I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think white people, a white father, should be upset. Hey, I want my daughter to marry a white man. I don't think a black father should be villainized for, hey, I want my daughter to marry a black man. Those are natural instincts. I don't, for two heterosexual people to have a baby and say, I want my child to be heterosexual. I don't think that's unusual. I don't think that's ungodly. And I think what most people that have a brain, you may have a set of preferences, but your preferences will bow at the end of the day. I'm a white guy, I want my daughter to marry a white guy. But if a black guy shows up that checks every box for that father in terms of like, oh man, he's going to treat my daughter well, he's following Jesus Christ, he's leading my daughter down the path of holiness, he's not going to cheat on my daughter, then he goes, well, my kids are going to be a little brown, my grandkids are going to be a little browner than me, I'll deal with that. That's most people. And so, that's even me. And just being transparent is like, I've preferred to date white women. The racial idolatry in me made me afraid of having kids that didn't look like me. And so I was paranoid about, man, I like white women. If I marry this woman and we're going to have kids and they may not look like me and blah, blah, blah. And so I was, well, let me keep holding out hope that there's going to be some black woman that ain't loud, that's not a matriarch, that doesn't think she's smarter than me, who, I'm going to run into and, doesn't want to wear 8-inch nails on her hands. And I'm just, and you can sit there and say, oh, it ain't. When you start trying to find a black woman that doesn't believe in feminism, and feminism is my kryptonite, or it's the thing I despise the most. It's hard, man. They're feminist, hardcore. And so I get people's preferences. I'm not wise enough to tell them, or in my own life, I haven't been able to figure that all the way out. But it's been my dealings with people. If we share values, I can get along with anybody, no matter what color they are. And I've people that share my values, no matter what they look like. They don't have a problem with me. They don't have a problem using the same bathroom as me. They don't have a problem eating out of the same bowl as me. They don't have a problem with, making me a part of their family. That's just been my life experience. And we just need more of that. So I don't know if I think I've kind of punted on your question a little bit. Now I have to marinate it on it some more. But TJ, we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap it up by telling you guys, you need to be coming to Roll Call May 2nd and 3rd. Make sure you go to fearlessrollcall.com, fearlessrollcall.com. It all ties into this conversation we've been having today. Thank you guys for joining me. We'll play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom.